So I started out as a young boy. My grandfather owned a dairy farm along Tulip Street. And we milked the cows and we produced the milk, and Grandpa drove the old Clydesdale and the trailer with the milk around this whole area. So I'm very familiar to it. Going back now, I'm 75, and I can remember back to it 70 years ago at least. And my love affair with the game of golf started when I did my apprenticeship at Sandringham Golf Club. Because we had the farm across the road, and there were only sort of, you could lift up wires and go through. So we found it quite productive to hide in the trees, wait till the balls came along, grab them. I'd get about 10, hide over the back, and then go down the back of the course and sell them. Right? Good little business going on, right? Well, we got caught one day, so we had to go straight. So with 3 brothers, we all decided that we'd go to Royal Melbourne Golf Club and become caddies. And that was good because it was a steady income and we had great experience in finding the balls. So when you went out with the members and they said, you any good at finding balls? Sure am. And we were, so we kept the job. Which reminds me of the old story about the Scotchman. He walked up the first tee over at St Andrews and he said to the young boys, the lady, he said, you a good caddy? He said, yes, sir. He said, any good at finding the balls? He said, I'm the best, sir. He said, well, go and find some, maybe 3, and we can hit off. So, they were my early days, caddying at Royal Melbourne, and as most of you would know, there are any people who have never been on Royal Melbourne in any form? Wouldn't be too many. What's the fishing here? How many have had lessons of me in this room? Hands up. Well, what about the rest of you? My lessons last too, don't worry about that. When I give you a lesson, you can remember it. I walked in the door and 3 people came up and said, I remember the lesson I had off you. Da, 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 da. I said, well, that's what it is. He never came back. Geraldine Shank, I was able to peel a few of those dollars that he's got hidden away. Right? Gerald and I spent a bit of time out there, as quite a few other boys in this room. So, got myself a very keen young golfer, self-taught, never had a lesson in my life. I'm a bad advertisement for a golf pro because I've never had a golf lesson. But when I was 19, I won the Victorian Professional Championship. And then when I was another 4 years later, I won it again at Long Island. So, you know, I could play a natural game, which I can still do today. I see the game, maybe I'm old-fashioned, but I see the game that way, that if you think too much, you can see golf pros everywhere. I'm watching the golf in Jason Day on the TV last night, having won, which was fantastic. And some of those guys just can't hit a ball. They stand there, and they've got to go through all sorts of processes. And while you're doing that, everything just tightens up. So my way of playing was always like the old boys, go out there, there's the ball, there's the club. We didn't have, it's a 56, and they get to the ball and you forget, you've got to go back and 55. No, the way I see it is that there's the ball, there's the hole, and if you can't work it out with your eye, then you shouldn't need to get the binoculars out. So that's how we started caddying, and I got a love of teaching very, very early on. I began teaching when I was 18. Before that, I went to Victoria Golf Club and I joined my old boss, Dennis Dennehy. He was looking for an assistant pro. I didn't tell my parents, I was still at school. I went up there and I saw Dennis and I got myself a job as assistant pro. And they were good years. Poor old Dennis was not well. He'd had a car accident, he had a few issues, which fortunately many years later, well, firstly he put me in the car, took me home and said to Mum and Dad, you've got to give him a chance. Mum and Dad weren't too sure whether I should do this. So he talked my Mum and Dad into me becoming a golf professional. And many years later, sadly, he was living in the Cheltenham Park. And thank God I was able to get him from there, rehabilitate him. Took him to Peninsula Country Club, they loved him. Then I brought him to Royal Melbourne, they loved him. And then we lost him, but I got a good 8, 9 years out of him. So I have great feel for that. It's not something that I go around telling everybody, but when I talk about Victoria Golf Club in those early days, terrific club. I still think about it, Sometimes I even think to myself, what? I wouldn't mind going back there. It was just, that's where you grow up, that's where you learn it all, that's where you're a young boy, you got pimples, and you never had a girlfriend, and you love golf, and then the older members, and there were some heavy hitters there, like old Joe Wren was a famous old guy, some of him. So my love of the club, like Brian Simpson, who is still the pro there. Brian and I applied for the pro job at the same time. He got it, and I went to Royal Melbourne, so we both won. So having done that, and done my apprenticeship, I was lucky enough to, the pro who took over from Dennis at Victoria was a guy called Alan Hire, and he had a way of getting the best out of you. He thought by sacking you every, say, 3 or 4 months. He made a bad mistake when he sacked himself and a guy called Barry Parks. It was the 3rd time he'd done it. I used to sack you on the Thursday night, and you'd get Friday off, and then you'd come in on the weekend. And his favourite line was to say, "Got a job yet?" And I said, "Yeah. I'm now the assistant teaching professional at Royal Melbourne Golf Club." Wow. He had to go and tell the old manager, Jack Merrick, who wasn't, he loved me. He wanted me to become his assistant manager, and I was his boy. So when he got that story, he said, "Right, you go back down and you offer him whatever Royal Melbourne offers and more. Whatever you do, you make sure that he stays here." And I said, "I'll never work there again." And that put the chapter to Royal Melbourne. So I've gone from Royal Melbourne there, back, and then I spent many years teaching. I went there to Riversdale Golf Club, which was fantastic. Great place to learn. As a young boy, I used to go there in a jacket and tie, and nowadays we all just rock up in a shirt, open neck or whatever, but in those days it was an old-fashioned golf club, still going well today. Beautiful old place. And all along the road, you learn more and more in this game how important people are in this game. They're everything. If you're a golf professional, if you haven't got the people, you haven't got a business. And then years later, I was teaching, I was state coach, and I was a high-profile coach for a lot of good players. And I felt like I'd lost the ladies at the golf club because they'd started going other places. I was busy, I was profile, they were a bit nervous. So I talked with a couple of ladies once, and we put a little group together, and we used to give them free clinics. To this day, I love my ladies at the golf club, and they love me. And if there's ever an insurance at a golf club, make sure you got the ladies on board, and you guys know it, okay? That's how the system works. So that was good learning there. Then I went to Peninsula Country Club. Peninsula Country Club, again, was old school at the time. Riversdale was old school, Royal Melbourne was old school. I mean, you call people sir, and you learn respect. So I get the job at Peninsula, and the first day I'm there, I'm in the shop, and Mr. Beatty comes in. So Ian Beatty, he'd been Lord Mayor. He said, "My buggy," this is my first day, "my buggy run flat on the 14th. He said, "What sort of pro are you going to be here?" Well, that's a good welcome. It was like, "Hi, nice to see you, and I hope you have a long time." And I got very upset about that. And I spoke to the manager, and I spoke to the president, or the club captain, I was. And that afternoon I got an apology from Mr. Beaurepaire, and we were great mates until he went. So that's how you work. If you work with people and you understand, because our game is all about people. If you understand the people and you know what they want, then you can't be standing above the people. You've got to work on the same level with people. So Peninsula was a great club to work with. I had some wonderful times down there. Still think about it a lot. I learned a lot from a chap down there called Eric Hales. Anyone ever heard of Eric Hales? Here's one, Dick. Eric Hales lost his eyesight in a game of football, Williamstown, I believe he was in the Air Force. He became the chief piano tuner for Brushes. He was a beautiful man, but he lost his sight. So I used to give him lessons, and how do you put the club behind the ball? We just touch the ball, and then Eric would swing and hit the ball, and amazingly, he never missed the ball. And a lot of times he could hit the ball really well, especially with the driver. I think teaching Eric taught me a lot about how if you relax enough and know where the ball is, you've got a much better chance than if you stand there and you start thinking of all the components and then you try and put the club on the ball. So Eric was a great man, a terrific guy. And Dennis Dennehy had come to me, as I said, to work for me down at Peninsula, having been through a really tough life. And they got on well. So they used to play golf, go to golf every Saturday afternoon. They play 9 holes on the North Course. One day Eric took Dennis, or Dennis took Eric, I don't know, but they both played for Collingwood, so they went out to Collingwood to watch the game. And they one eye between the two of them, and there was a young guy sitting next to them, and he picked up on that, because Eric would say, Eric would be saying to Dennis, what's that, where are they, who's winning, who's it? This young fellow took over and he commentated for the whole game. It must have been a fascinating afternoon, sitting there watching this guy telling me down that end and so-and-so's got the ball. It was a full commentary. But Eric said to me, he said, Brucey, he said, I'm playing well enough now that he said, I want to play you. Right? I want to play you for $100. Right? He said, because I reckon I can beat you. I reckon I know how to beat you. I said, Eric, I'm Victorian PGA champion. Come on. He said, well, how about you give me 5 shots either side? And I said, Eric, this is silly. Just give me the money now and we'll go to the drink. He said, there'll be one condition. We play at 3 in the morning. Never forgotten. Never ever forgotten. Eric Howes, what a beautiful man. But these are the people that you meet along the road. You meet all sorts of times. Sometimes I get asked the question, which anyone's got a question later, feel free to ask. I had this guy, pardon me, so he comes over there, he rings up and he said, my name is Mike Butcher. He says, I've been looking on YouTube, and he said, I think you're the man for me. You know, I don't want one of these young kids. I need someone like you. So he goes, you won't know until you see what problems I got. I said, all right, Eric. Okay, so Mike, we'll do a deal. So we did him a deal. And he came down. And he was a right-hander, and he'd get to there, and then the arms would go straight up here because he'd injured. He worked in the dockyards at Williamstown, and he'd injured the left elbow. So he'd get to there, and the only way you go through is that way, so of course the balls that went there. One of the guys at the club walked past one day, he said, whispered in my ear, he said, good luck. So we had 5 lessons, and I tried punching the ground, no good. Impact bag, no good. It's D-Day. And I've got to somehow or other tell him I can't help him. He's really not a lovely guy, but I really can't tell him. I don't know what do I do. So we're heading away, and he just, they're all along the ground. It's just not working. And I had a flash in my mind. I thought, you know what? I'm going to go to the teaching shed. I want to see if there's a left-handed wood in there. So I brought the left-handed wood back over. He put the ball down on the tee, and he hit it nearly 200 metres with a slight draw. Left-handed. He couldn't get the ball off the ground the other way. It went so well that 3 weeks later he came to a demo day and bought a brand new set of Callaway left-handed clubs. I gave him a lesson last week. He plays golf every week. He loves the game, and we fluke one. So you don't have to be by the book. Sometimes you put the book over there and you say, right, okay, leave the book there. Right, how can we go about this? How do we get into here? Right? Because I'm just leading into coaching a bit. How many of you still play golf or are playing golf? Okay.
I like to think so.
You like to think so? Beautiful. Well, it doesn't matter how you play, it's a lovely walk. So, one of the big things about playing the game is to handle the thing that's inside your head, right in here. See that? There's three parts of the brain in my eyes, and that is one, the front, it's conscious, in the middle, subconscious, and in the back, holding. Okay? So if you listen and you hit a few good shots and it feels okay, brain puts it into the centre, right in there. And if you run it over enough times and you can get access to the door, to the subconscious in the back, you may keep it for a long time. Biggest problem is there's somebody already in the back. Okay? And that somebody, there's a fair chance that's not right, otherwise you wouldn't be with me. Okay? So the hardest thing, and I always say to people, here's my man here. How do you spell shop?
S-H-O-P.
What do you do when you come to a green light?
Stop.
You don't. Be careful when you go home.
Yes,
you don't
of
stop at
course.
green lights. Okay? No. Let's get that straight, right? And I don't want to be responsible for a car accident out there today, right? Stop, red light, green light, go. But there's the subconscious, because I've gone, you know, how do you spell shop? So I've got off in here, I've got stop in there. And then when I run it straight through, you go, what do you do when you come to a green light? Of course you stop. And then you go, well, some people, they look at me like I'm stupid, they go, yeah, well, what? I go, yeah, what? You just told me to stop at green lights. Oh, no. I got one bloke, 3 years in a row I've got him. 3 years in a row, subconscious. So, anyway, just back onto where we were at Peninsula Country Club, having a good time down there. But my love was always for where I've just spent 40 years as the head professional. It's my home, it's my family, they're all my brothers and sisters. And I can't think of where a little kid who walked out of school when he was 17 and spent the rest of his life at Royal Melbourne Golf Club working with some of the high-profile business people. I played golf there with Sean Connery. I played golf there with Billy Crystal. I played golf there with Bob Hope. Bob Hope was on the first tee and his wife. We have a green shed, if you've been there. On the first tee, just on the left, there's a shed for the ladies to hit. Right, so they can't get hit. Bob Hope hit off and his wife, Dolores, was in the shed and made a hell of a crash, hit the shed. She came running out and she went, God damn! Turned to me and he said to me, travel halfway around the world, why would you put a shed in front of the first tee? And I said, that's to save your life from getting hit. So I'm very lucky to Ronnie Corbett became a good friend. He would come play every second or third year. There were many, many interesting celebrities. But by making that decision to want to become a golf pro, for Dennis backing me in those early days, to be able to go to Riversdale and have a great time, a great learning time. The lunches at Riversdale were fantastic. They had a Sunday lunch. No wonder I got a bit of, not that looked too bad there. I was breathing in. That outfit there, I did a video with Peter Thompson at Royal Melbourne. And the first video we ever done was a golf video, was at Royal Melbourne in 1979 with Peter Thompson. And those stripes, have a look at it. Beautiful. What I find out 30 years later, Peter Thompson, my second cousin. So we're family. We got any Watsons in the room? Anyone related to a Watson? No? Probably right, because the Watsons were cattle thieves, cattle reavers on the Scottish-English border. Used to sneak over in the middle of the night, and then they just grab a couple of cows and whip them over the other side. So if you went to Scotland, you bought the Watson tartan, they'd tell you you're a cattle reaver. That's where I got that little ball feeding thing from. So, of course, I guess I'm wandering back and forth to where I've been, and I had an experience when I was in Victoria, where Jack Merritt was the hard-nosed, tough old, good old bloke as the manager. And he looked after me, and he was good to me. But we did run into one problem one night. Myself and the other trainee, we used to play 6 or 7 holes at night after work. And we always went along to Long Park Road. And there always seemed to be 2 girls that sit on the fence over there with a dog. And you could get through the fence then, so we'd wave, they'd wave. Eventually we got them over. I'm thinking, this might be my first coming up here. Anyway, we got them out and we're wandering down the 5th hole. And we're hitting balls. We probably hit 30 balls under the green. And then I got this horrible feeling, even when I talk about it today, the feeling's still there. Old Jack Merrick came on his cart. He was the only one who had a cart. And it was 7 o'clock at night. And he cruised right up next to us. And he said, see you in my office at 9 in the morning. And I'm still assistant brothers, good to the end. Right? Couldn't sleep. Waited till a few minutes past 9. Bzzz. I said 9 o'clock in my office. For those who play at Vic, or those who have been to Vic, the locker room and you walk up the steps, that may have been the longest walk up a hill I've ever been in my life. I kept thinking this is the end of the road. What am I going to do? What do I say? So I get to the door, glass windows, which I think might be still there today. The secretary pulled the windows back. I said, I'm here to see Mr. Merrick. Oh, he'll see you shortly. Shortly, he's sitting there reading the Herald Sun, got the glasses on down. 20 minutes later, she said, Mr. Merrick will see you now. Walk in, sit down. You have a good time last night? What do I say? Yes, Mr. Merrick. I couldn't tell him that he'd spoiled my first opportunity to get my first fly out of the target. No. So, I said yes. He put his hand out, he said, good luck to you, son. There's more to golf. There's more than golf in this life. You go and enjoy yourself and be a good boy. I walked out there like I just bought Victoria Golf Club. I walked up there thinking, I'm gone. I'll never forget it. And he was a great man to me. In fact, he gave me a reference to get the job at Riversdale Golf Club. And that reference said it would please the rider greatly if he was appointed to any position he went for. I got to the interview, I sat down, and they said, well, basically we've made up our mind. The reference from Mr. Merrick, as far as we're concerned, is good enough for us. Now let's get down to the tin tacks. You'll do T-Star, you'll do this, you'll do that, you'll do this. And that was it, which, you know, is fantastic about Jack. Okay, so I think it's time for a few questions. If there are any left. Yes, sir.
What do you think about the Leave organisation?
Yeah, that's a new one. Some of the ladies at one of these I did thought it was, well, you're better to live than die, I suppose. But the Live Golf is a little bit of a phenomenon. I think I looked at it first up and everyone's saying, you know, where's the money coming from? Oh, it's a nasty place, and you know, they got millions of dollars. But the PGA Tour does evolve, and they come, and they go, and you get new heroes. You get the young guy who's got the beautiful wife, and the kids running onto the green when they won their tournament, they were big kids. So my feeling is this has opened up the opportunity for a whole lot now. And of course, you look at Jason Day, they won yesterday. The boys are there now. Phil's out. He's over playing the Masters, that's it. Dustin Johnson and many others have all gone, packed away millions. If someone came to me, the same situation years ago, and they offered me 50 million, I'm going to take it. Because in golf, your back can go tomorrow and your career's done. You can retire, you can invest the money, and your family for years and years and years are going to be the beneficiaries to that investment, hopefully. So I'm okay with it. I just think it's, if there's a message that comes out of it, there's a message that's coming out of it, and that is that we all are looking and saying, golf's starting to show itself as a bit more fun. Many years ago when I played tournaments, Tony Charlton used to run Victorian Opens, and we'd have marching girls and skydivers and music, and of course then Tony moved on and we went back to being very serious, very clinical. There's nothing wrong with that, but if you want to promote the game to the young people today, then you've got to relax a little bit. You can't just tighten them up into that clothes no good, you've got to go home and change, you know, all this, because the young kids sometimes don't want to go to the golf club because they feel that, you know, you go with mum and dad, no, you can't go there, no, you're going to stay over here. So I think Live Golf is just putting in another dimension, it's opening things up, and those who are beneficiaries of all that money, that's great. We can get all that money from the nasty people and then invest that somewhere in the world, that's good. So I can't find, you know, being an old traditionalist, yeah, I'm still saying, well, it was pretty good as it was, but I'm thinking of all these young guys, and there are names coming up every week you've never heard of. Yesterday there were 4 more names right up the top of the tree, never heard of them, beautiful players. So I'm thinking it's clearing things out a bit, and then what's going to happen is the question. Where's this going to go? Is this going to last for 20 years? We know that over there, you know, they're in the back of their mind that one day they might run out of oil. So they've got car racing, they've got horse racing, they've got tennis championships, they've got golf, everything's going on. So, okay, I don't think that's all that bad. I think because the generational change that's coming for all those young ones who live over there, they go over to Europe for schooling, England they go, and they don't want to wear all this stuff. They don't want to be having somebody sitting next to them to go to the supermarket or out to a drink. I see it in a broader picture. Hope that answered it all right. Next.
Bruce,
Jeff?
Graham Keys.
Oh, Graham,
I've
yes,
enjoyed
Graham.
my wife's reciprocity for Victoria Golf Club, and they, as I understand it, they recently lost their reciprocity with Royal Sydney. Is there more to reciprocal arrangements with golf clubs than sort of meets the eye? Is there any financial reason for lots of reciprocity?
Well, I think when you see reciprocal, the word reciprocal kind of means that you reciprocate. If you come to my place for dinner, then I go to your place for dinner. If I give you lobster and everything and I go there and you give me a fillet of fish, maybe there's a difference, I don't know. I think that the reciprocation of the golf clubs is a good way of the golf clubs feeling like they're brothers and sisters. I mean, Royal Melbourne is far more open. When I went there as a young boy, everybody was served, and there was a level that only kept to themselves. They came and played and putted around for a shilling, and they'd go and have a drink. In the old days, I was there just at the end of when there was accommodation there, and they come down and they play golf. Same blokes every time, no time sheet, same guys. They get into the grog, play cards, bit of tour, and then they flake. Then they go home the next day for a roast lunch. Pretty good deal, I reckon. It's changed. Jermaine Greer changed a lot of that. I think, yeah, reciprocal is still a good thing. It is a good thing. And what happens is the golf clubs say, right, oh, we've got Victoria. So they roll the greens and, you know, they make it pins as tucked as far right or left as you can get. Then we go back there and you do it to us. Yeah, and then we go away friendly. The only problem we have at Royal Melbourne is it costs us a lot more to have Victoria than Royal Melbourne going to Victoria financially, because your blokes won't leave the bar, right? And they try and close the bar, and your blokes are still there. So, then again, it's good. We need the money. We just spent a lot of money on an underground car park. So, yeah, we do need the money. Any other questions? Yeah.
Bruce, who's the best player you've ever played with or you've seen in all your years?
Very good question. Thank you, Alan. The best striker of the ball, there was a guy called Bob Stanton. Some of the older generation remember Bob Stanton. He was a magnificent hitter of a golf ball. I've never seen anything like it. It was just, everything was just pure. It was like a string. It just went and just dropped. He's up in, he has coffee at the cafe in Port Douglas on the top side, number 5 there every morning, 10 o'clock with a little gang around. He went to America. He won the Dunlop International at Royal Canberra. I was there sitting watching him hit on the practice field. He won the World's Masters. He won a tournament Australian. And then he went to overseas as a young boy. Loved a young wife, had a baby. And he got contracted to work for the owners who just built Hilton Head, I think. I'm right? Yeah, so he worked there as a pro that just based, he would be sponsored half the year, because the tournaments were only half a year. And he sort of went out fishing all the time and had a great life, mixed with a girl a bit, and then the marriage fell apart, and poor old Bobby. We lost him. And then one year, out of nowhere, he came back. He played in the New South Wales Open, and he finished about 3rd or 4th, and then he came down to Royal Melbourne and he played in the Australian Open, and Tom Watson 2-putted on the last green to beat him by a shot. This guy hadn't played golf for years. That's how good he was. I mean, seriously good. But when you look at the competitors, I mean, I find it hard to get past Jack Nicklaus. Tiger Woods, fantastic, great player. Jack, with old clubs, old balls, overweight, but one hell of a golfer. And his concentration would be as good as anyone who's played the game. So I'll put them up there together. I'll square them off. They're the two. But there's so many young guys coming through. The equipment's helping, but they all work out in the gym and they hit the ball mine. So all the golf courses are just drive, wedge, drive 9, drive 8, par 5s, all in 2. So the scoring is not unusual to see 61 or 62 in the first round. The only problem with that is the guy shot 61 or 62 in the first round. Have a look where he is at the end of the 4th round, because he can only go that way. He doesn't go 61, 58, 52. He goes there, and then he starts thinking about it, and he drifts back. So it's all interesting. Yeah.
Do you think they're going to take distance off the ball?
Yeah, again, that's a question that goes around. I mean, my feeling is that the longer they hit the ball, more often the ball goes in the trees. And the other thing is, a lot of people who watch the game of golf actually like to see the pros mess up. It makes them feel good, right? So a lot of these courses are landlocked, so therefore you can't just put another 100 on. But I played in a tournament at Royal Melbourne many years ago when Lee Trevino was in the group in front, and he walked off and said he'd never come back, and he never did. Because we didn't water. We just never watered for a couple of weeks, 2 or 3. The greens are like that. We had rough. We fertilised the rough, and the rough is like that. You can make Royal Melbourne nillion plus, it wouldn't matter what you do with a golf ball. You can make a golf course as hard as you like, but what we all want to be is fair, because the last thing a golf club wants is criticism about how hard and how unfair that golf course is. Like Moonah Links, when they first built that, the pros didn't like to go there. They spent millions and millions of dollars, but pros didn't want to go there because they had bunkers in the middle of the fairway everywhere. My second cousin did that. Any other questions? Yeah, I'm sorry, I will not ask you another one of those.
Right, I'll get my own back this time.
We'll shake hands anyway. You're right? Okay.
Would you like to make some comments about the President's Cup?
Yep, sure can. President's Cup, it's a one-sided event because you've got America, thousands and thousands of great golfers. So you then think, well, okay, the internationals, we should be able to get one from there, one from there, one from here, one from there, one from there. No, it's not that easy, right? Because when Dick Kirby was over here, or Dick was my manager when I was state coach, and it's not easy to keep those blokes all working together, because they've all got egos, they've all got personalities. The hardest thing we had, Dick, where are you, Dick? right there. You still look the same, Nick. That's Nathan. We had two guys. One, his nickname was Snuffy. You can work out what that might have meant, right? And then we had a fellow called Jim Kirby, who was about 6'4". So you got Snuffy here, and Jim here. But we put them in the room together, and it worked. So one day when Jim peeled the blankets back, and he said, "Have a look at this." Eric and Snuffy, his eyes lit up. But they worked well together, didn't they? They worked well together. So the same thing when you go back to President's Cup. The Americans know each other so well. You know, even when they're not playing tournaments, they live down in the desert and they play together and they all hang out. So they're all just one big family. Probably outside of Patrick Reed. They're all mates, right? Whereas we've had at Royal Melbourne, and we've had boys from Korea who can hardly speak English at all, right? And have one practice round. You need 15 practice rounds at Royal Melbourne because there's so many different things that can go on every time you play. 1 minute bounces through, one minute goes over there, goes down here. There's so many different ways. So I don't know, well, how long can you keep playing an event where you know the result before it happens? And the same when you watch tennis. If you know that the same guys are going to watch tennis, you don't even sit up and watch it. You know, you need something to happen. The only thing in our favour is a lot of good young Koreans are coming out now. There was a boy in that event yesterday who never heard of him. Saw the name up there and I thought, who's he? He was Chinese, right? He came very close to winning and he gets some great scores. So there's a lot of these boys coming out of Korea, China, Asia, India. They can really add to the whole thing.
Chris,
Yeah,
you got any stories about professionals and cheating?
cheating.
Yeah.
Well, we had the one, we had the famous one, I can't remember what his name was, over at, it's too long ago, it's a long time ago. He was well known, right? And then there's half the problem with the cheating thing is who's right and who's wrong. But if you get the obvious one on TV, like Patrick Reed, well, that was clearly cheating. And we don't like that, we don't want to see that. But, you know, I know when I played tournament golf, all the time, there was always borderline things. And you're playing with your mates and you go, can it get a drop there? Well, probably not, but it's a mate of mine. And the line ball, well, yeah, you can get a drop. When you played with Peter Thompson, before I knew he was a relative, he'd give you nothing. Nothing. None. He said to me one day, I'll give it to John Lindsay, but I wouldn't give it to you. So, yeah, look, it happens in every game. I see it happening in football. You know, if there's obvious, deliberate cheating, then that's just got to be highlighted because all the young kids coming up in this game need to get a better picture of you of it all. So I see. Yeah.
Some years there's been a lot of work going on at Royal Melbourne on the western side of the clubhouse. I walked past there the other day. I see there's now a fine building that's been built up there. I thought they were building an underground car park, but
They
there's
are.
still car parking for golfers down further.
And that's underneath the
Could you
practice
explain
league.
just what's happened
Yeah.
in that part of the golf course?
So they put an underground car park. How many spots we got out?
193.
Say 190.
Yeah, I had about 100, I had about 115, but it varies a bit. Anyway, you can drive into the
Bruce,
car
could
park.
you hold the microphone?
Oh, sorry.
Thank you.
I get a bit like that. My arm's hanging on. No, yeah, we've always had a problem where on busy days, like the ladies' break-up days, sometimes corporate days, and there is an overflow, they park on the back of the practice fairway. The club made the decision to put the car park underneath, which has been controversial, but I think it will be fantastic. It's state of the art. I think a lot of golf clubs will probably look at it and go, we're not going to spend all that money on putting a car park. But it's there forever. Been down, I've had a look through it. I think it looks great. Big putting green, you know, it's something that, you know, at some stage you'll all wander through there and get a look at it. Then you've got the bowlers, they've got a big pavilion put up. And before they used to have to go to the clubhouse and battle for a table and a few seats. And then there's the cafe as well. So there'll be a cafe on the practice fairway, so you can all look and laugh at your mates, have a look at him. So obviously in the middle of the fairway it won't be get used to, right? So we'll be hiding over either side. So there's the cafe, then there's the bowler's pavilion, then there's a big beautiful grass tee and a big putting green all the way through to the pro shop. So when it's finished, I think it'll be fantastic.
And the practice greens down further, are they?
Practice, well, the chipping greens further down, yeah. Yeah, you go down the path, then there's three greens. Great chipping facility, really good, yeah. No, I would say one thing, we'll love them when they do it. They do it pretty good.
Will they impose a levy?
No. No, we have a thing called corporate golf days, which are filling the place every Monday at the moment, and it's lots of money, big car companies. I'd be amazed if that ever happened. The builder unfortunately tipped over, the club has taken over the contractors, pays the contractors, and it's all getting done, and it's all coming together. You know, a lot of inconvenience for the members, but I think you'll find it will be pretty impressive.
Yeah.
Thank you, gentlemen. Thanks for your attendance and encouragement.
Thanks, Bruce. I did want to ask, do you have any inside incidents with some of the big pros that came out here, like Gary Player or Nicholas, all those?
You probably go Gary. Well, Gary Player had that unfortunate incident in Sydney with I think it was. Who was it? Anyone know?
No, I can't.
Playing golf at the Australian, David Graham. And one was hitting down one fairway, the other one was going up the other, and there's mounds in between, a bit of grass. And both balls were exactly the same. In those days, we didn't mark the balls. So I think Gary might have put a little pressure to say, that one there with a better lie is definitely mine. That's sort of how it went. So but having said that, Gary Player, in 1979, when I was first back to Royal Melbourne as a head pro, I got invited to play in the PGA, Australian PGA Championship, and I'm in the pro shop, and the helicopter comes down in front of the 18th of the East, and out gets Gary Player, and they've got about 6 reporters, a few cameras. He said, "Gentlemen, show me where the pro shop is, I need to talk to the pro." Came up, I was there, introduced himself, said how long you've been here. I said 3 months as head pro, but I've been here as a caddy, teaching pro. He said, he said, who was here before you? I said, an old gentleman called Alex Orr. He said, where is he now? I said, he's in Heidelberg repat and he's only got a few days to live. He said, can you get me on the phone? I went in there, in the little office. I rang Heidelberg repat. The lady answered. I said, I'd like to speak to Mr. Alec Orr. Terribly sorry, Mr. Orr is very ill, not taking calls. Who's calling? I said, Mr. Gary Player. Oh, the golfer? Just a moment. So I hooked him up and he talked for 10 minutes. And I spoke to Alec the next day and it would have been one of the greatest thrills of his life. He died 2 days later. So Gary Player in my books. And he also said to me, wished me well in the tournament. I did extremely well and came close to winning that tournament, that stage. And then he said, Wayne, my son will be over at Metropolitan for the Open on Monday, come and play the practice round with us. So I did. Then, 3 weeks ago, turns up at Royal Melbourne. So I remembered him, of course, but he remembered, well, he made out like he remembered me. And he wanted a photo with me, so we got a photo together, and that was it. Any other incidents? Oh. You can't take it. Probably won't. Yeah, but I might say that we played golf a little different in those days. There was a rat pack of 4. There was a guy called Bob Shearer, a guy called Ian Stanley, a guy called Jack Newton, and a guy called Bruce Green. So when we played, we didn't go to the practice ferry afterwards or the gym like they do now. We used to go to the pub in Caulfield. What was that called? The Turf Club Hotel. That's where we would always meet. So 7 o'clock dinner, we'd invite the girls that were wear the sashes for sweats and everything else, and the rest used to unfold. I'd already had practice before that. There are some other stories, but I'll tell you one-on-one in the corner back there.
We might get some more out of him over lunch. That's good. Gary, could you come and thank our guest speaker?
Thank you for that. Well, Bruce, that was very enlightening, and I just have a little story of my own. I told my wife today I was coming down to listen to you talk, and she said, he was the guy that gave me my first golf lesson. And I said, well, I'll see if I can get your money back.
I left my wallet behind.
Honestly, she's a better golfer than me, so you must have done a pretty good job. Anyway, on behalf of the club, really, thanks very much. We're a bunch of golfers, and here's a little token of our
Thank you,
esteem
sir.
and appreciation.